Okay, welcome back to the Beat Laboratory of Clark Youngblood. We're going to another kitchen installation, a little bit different than what I've showcased before. This particular kitchen is a big box store kitchen cabinet package. I would say they're mid-level, budget-minded cabinetry package. Every kitchen I install, it's routine for me now, but maybe a list that you put right in your package of prints. And when I walk into the kitchen space, I'm looking around, this is my list. The sink center on the window, most cases that's a scenario. Does that sink center line up with the cabinetry on the print? Does the math all work out right, or is it going to push the faucet over 3 inches off of center? Is there a bank of drawers? I think every kitchen should have at least one bank of drawers. If you don't have a designer involved, that could be an easy one to miss. Do you have an appliance close to an inside corner that is going to prohibit the functionality of cabinetry on the opposite corner? Like a drawer just won't open, because sometimes a stove or an appliance like that sticks out quite a bit further than the front face of the cabinetry. Wherever the placement of the refrigerator is, the refrigerator door has got to open so far so that the crispers open also. After you're done installing all of the cabinetry, is it possible to get a refrigerator into the spot? That's an important little factor you're going to have to deal with. You may have to install a peninsula or an island afterwards. If you have a large Lazy Susan cabinet, is that going to fit in the house? Good, if it's going to go through the front door. Is it going to fit through the doorway? Maybe there's an opening in the kitchen that it just won't pass through. We're going to talk about that in this video a little bit. There is a way around that, but you're going to want to know that earlier on and not be surprised by it later. Does the cabinetry cover up electric? Is there an outlet that's going to get covered up? Is there a switch that's going to get covered up? Is there any interference at all with the electrical? Do the light locations work, or are you going to open up a cabinet door on an upper and hit something? Does the cabinetry math work out in your favor for the crown molding to work out properly, or is the crown molding going to go past a corner? Does the layout of the cabinetry and the print match the space? Mistakes can get made in the field measurement. I go through and I'm going to make sure that I put a view in the areas that cabinetry displayed on the print. Whatever the best angle is, whatever the best view is, that's what I'm going for. I make sure that I don't tape this onto the wall where cabinetry is going to cover it. You'd be surprised at how easy of a mistake that is to make. The next thing is I set up my trusty laser level. Over time, I have always used this ladder, that step, that laser. Everything is just familiar, and I try to do the same thing every single time. The reason why that's important is because when I snap the line for the top of the lower cabinets, it's not going to get hidden. Then I go through and I make a mark in the center of the laser line. And then I measure from the floor up to that line. And that helps me understand where the highs and lows are in the floor. I circle that line. Underneath that line is my dimension from the floor to that line. It's always good to keep in mind that where I'm measuring, there's a difference in floor material. So that's a different thickness that'll add up to a different dimension. I pay particular close attention to where I'm putting that line in those dimensions. Where it's going to count is at the ends, in the center of the sink base. I don't need to do it every 6 inches, just kind of where it makes the most sense. The next thing I try to do is from that line to the ceiling, I like to see if I can't pick apart where there's a low spot or a red flag. For instance, this is 59 inches from the ceiling to this line, and that's 59.25. So that ceiling rises up going from here to there. That wouldn't matter in this area because there's no cabinetry around this window or above it. It might seem redundant to have these dimensions so close together, but I found that corners can have the most amount of drywall mud. The next thing I try to do is I like to keep in mind that this is a long wall. So the odds of this wall being perfectly flat and level and plumb and geometrically correct are pretty low. If I take a piece of tape, I measure out, I try to use a Sharpie here and measure out 6 inches at the other end of a long wall, that'll help me determine, and it doesn't have to be 6 inches, it can be 3 inches or 2 inches. And when I connect those with my laser, I'll be able to measure periodically on this wall to that 6-inch laser. And whatever's not 6 inches, I'll write that down. Another thing that is a cute little trick is it's hard to see from one end to the other. It can be a little difficult to see this mark from the other side of the room. So I just take a roll of tape or any object and I put a straight line on there. And then that way it's easier to find that line with my laser. That's 5 13/16. I'm going to circle that twice to distinguish these numbers from those. I don't have to, but I'm pretty anal retentive about labeling. This is 5 3/4, 5 3/4 heavy, 5 13/16, 5 7/8 light, 5 13/16, that's 6 light. Now I gotta kind of go through and see what the top is doing. Everything that I'm doing is within about 1/4 of an inch. I'm looking for like 3/4 of an inch or an inch where that wall will belly way out. Because as I install that row of cabinetry, I don't want to start where the belly might be out in the backyard. I want to start my cabinetry where that belly is more into the house. Otherwise, I'll keep fighting it every time I put a cabinet. Just as I like to install at the high point in the floor. If I were to install a low point in the floor, every time I go to install a cabinet, it's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher if I start out at the low point. That's why we try to determine where a big belly or a dip may be in a wall. Up here at the ceiling, I'm looking for 6 inches and I have 5 3/4 light. So that's 1/4 inch heavy between the floor and the ceiling. That means that this wall is tipping in towards us at the top. Well, that's not that big of a deal because in an ideal world, in a perfect world, on the computer or on paper, the walls are just dead flat. Okay, that's just not the case. 1/4 inch is not really that bad because by the time you put your lower in, that's like the lower half of the cabinetry. So if that wall has got 1/4 inch in it, just kind of think in terms of dividing that in half. So that's about 1/8 of an inch. So at the top, 1/8 of an inch is really not that big of a deal. You can have your wall multiple places off, plus or minus 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch. Really not that big of a deal. What you're really looking for is that huge belly or maybe a stud that pops out 1/2 an inch. And then maybe the next stud is like a little bit further than that. And then the whole wall is out of plumb by, 1/4 of an inch. Now we're talking like 3/4 of an inch of an issue. This method helps you find those areas so you don't have to find them later and question really what is going on with this cabinetry. Why can't I get that one cabinetry tighter? It's a struggle and you seem to be fighting it the entire time. And it may come to a point where it seems to be getting worse as you continue along adding another cabinet and another cabinet. The next thing I want to do is see how flat the floor is in all 3 spaces. There's this run, there's the island that's in the center of the floor, about in this area, and there's this wall of cabinetry. One of the things that I try to pull off is to make sure that if you were to look across the countertop from the island to whatever is beyond it, that countertop, I'd like to try to make that on the same plane. I wrote down the dimensions on the floor. I didn't make a big deal about this, but I just wanted to get an idea of about what direction the floor is at. That's 36 7/8 heavy. This is 37 1/32, and over here is 36 11/16. This is about the highest point The island is sitting in a little bit of a ditch, and everything else is a little bit higher. When I install the island, which is going to be last, I'll make sure that I shim it up a little bit more to make sure that the top of the cabinetry is in line with the top of the cabinetry in this section, this run of cabinets. That's just a little goal. What's the best way to run this chalk line? Right at that line that was 2 inches below the line that represents your laser line. In the corner, run a screw and hook your chalk line onto it. And I'm gonna pull that pretty damn tight. That's why it's a little better if it's into a stud, because I'm gonna pull that line, baby, pull that thing. And I'm gonna line up my line that's 2 inches below my laser line. And I'll give you a snappity wappity. Would you? Good. Oh. Yeah. Oh, that was fun. I gotta make sure the cats don't get out. Ooh. It's a good thing that there's a step here. That way I can kind of ramp it up. Should have brought that card in. That would make things easier. A lot of people ask me, don't you want help? Yeah, good help is hard to find. I win. You don't have to be the world's strongest man. You don't even have to be the world's smartest man. You just got to tell yourself that you can do it and set yourself up for success. There's a thing called a hypotenuse. There's the ceiling, here's the floor, and here is this long cabinet. For this thing to go and tip up, you don't want to have this corner hit the ceiling. Bonk. So the dimension from here to here, let's say that that's 94 inches. That dimension here cannot exceed this dimension here, which should be about 95.5. This is a big monster. This thing is a little over 36, 50, and like 11/16 in that direction. That is 33.5. Of course, about 34.5 inches tall in that direction. There was a couple of things that I didn't want to let fly by. Number one, somehow I didn't get the footage of me actually wrestling that oven cabinet in place. They sent the toe kick separately. I didn't realize that. It was just in the box flopping around. So it went in, no problem. On a kitchen I did just before that, they didn't send the toe kick separately. So it was a hypotenuse problem. I'd say most cases that oven cabinet is going to have a lower cabinet to the left and right of it. So it's of almost no consequence to just nip off the back corner. That's the trick there. Because it gets hidden, it's still going to stand up. By nipping off, a little triangle of the left side at the bottom and the right side at the bottom, and if there's anything left, you just have to eliminate that and it'll stand right up. It's not that big of a deal. The last one I did, everyone lost their mind, like, wow, that was just brilliant. I've had to do that a couple times, and that's the trick. No need to, cause a hole in the ceiling or freak out or anything like that. You just got to eliminate the hypotenuse. That's number one. Number two, the corner cabinet is a tricky installation. Just shimming it, just making sure that it's going to be at the right height. And that back corner is pretty important because the stone, you know, everything, the weight, you want some support there from the dead bottom, good foundation, all the way to the top. And it's got to stop at the right spot in space in geometry world. The next part, pay close attention to it. Those big corner cabinets, they're one of the biggest cabinets that go in a kitchen, if not the biggest. They don't fit in every space. They don't fit in every house. I just want to touch on a little fact here because I've done quite a bit of installing cabinets. And one time I ran across a scenario where the designer didn't catch the fact that that cabinet was not going to fit in that house. How? I don't know, because it was a tiny house with tiny doors, and that's a gigantic cabinet. When I was faced with that, I thought, well, if this designer would have done some measuring, and I think that's, if you're going to do a field measure, when you walk through the door to do it, take note. The screen door, the door, if you're installing on your own, you've been in a scenario with whoever you were helping that taught you everything. You've been in that scenario where you've had to take the door off the hinges, not a big deal, and it gives you an extra, you know, like 2 inches that you need. That cabinet may not go in that house without totally dismantling it. I don't have the footage of it. Only happened to me once, but I can tell you the play is to gingerly remove every staple in that cabinet. Take a chisel and remove all of the hot glue and gently pound it apart. Not fun. Clean up all of the glue with a good sharp chisel. Do nice clean work. It took me maybe an hour and I had all of the parts to this cabinet on the ground in good working order, and I took them in one piece at a time. When you're gonna wanna know this other fact, when you do that, you need room in the kitchen to reassemble it. When I did this, it just so happened that the builder had scheduled everybody that day that I was supposed to install the kitchen. In the center of the kitchen, my only place in a small kitchen, small house, the only place for me to assemble this was right in the center of where, I swear it was like the flooring guy that was there, the drywaller, the carpet guy, the tile guy, everybody was there. It was so frustrating to reassemble it. The important thing here is not to tell you what a horrible day that I had. The important thing is to know, A, yes, those cabinets can come apart. It's not easy. You have to be careful because it's just particle board, hot glue and staples. And just like that, you can have an unsightly damage, but you can take it apart and you can put it back together. You will need some space because these parts are big and you got to have a space to walk around it and work on. That's my little interruption in this part of the video. This is a tricky putt if you don't know this little ditty. Getting it positioned and level, it has several points to pay attention to. Obviously the right side, the left side, but what about this back? It's going to be really hard when it's in place to shim that up, right? Because you can't just morph into a flea, grab your shims and bring them with you in your car jack to get it up. So here's the play. This is maybe the reason why you subscribe to this channel. This is about 19-ish inches. See where that ends up here. You know, measure and make sure it's equal that way, equal that way. It's about 13 inches, gets you about 19 inches diagonally. Come down here and draw a line. What I do is I've got to make sure where this thing is sitting, this big oven cabinet, I put this 3/4 inch block under this sub base. So I want to make sure that I understand that from the bottom of this to my laser line is like, what, 2 9/16? And I put some shims here, and that should be the same. That's like 2.5 heavy. This is almost a little too high. No, actually, I read that wrong. That's 2.5 heavy. What that means, that block of shims with laminate and MDF, it's a really dense material and is flat, so that cabinet can shift around on there slightly. It's not going to rise up and down if it were like tapered shims that you would use to set a door. And I screwed those to the subfloor. And see how I screwed them? Here's my line. This pad is going to hit my target zone on the back bottom side of the cabinet. I can set my cabinet there and just level the left and the right side. That's the magic number. Let's set this on top of that block and see how much luck we have. Oh, that's nice. Get as close as you can, and then put your hip into it without any sharp objects on your hip. The back is on top of that block. That's our starting point for all of that run of cabinetry. Now I've got to make sure the bottom of the oven cabinet and the bottom of this are perfectly in line with one another. One way to do that is to measure from the bottom of the face frame. That is 32 3/8 heavy. The bottom of this face frame is 33 1/4 light. So it's got to come up quite a bit, like maybe in the 3/4 inch zone. So I put a stack there. When I set a stack of shims like that, I want to make sure that they'll catch the next cabinet. And see how you can slide that back and forth? If those were tapered shims, no bueno. It wouldn't work well. If this was supposed to be 32 3/8 heavy, 32 3/8 heavy, this is now 32 3/8 heavy. What's this side? 32 3/8 light. It's a little bit too high, like some of them fellers in high school. Put these on the uppers. Some sort of a 3/4 inch minimum piece of wood. This is just OSB. Countersink, use 1 1/4 screws. Don't nail them on, because if you nail, ooh, that's hot. If you nail it on, you can go through there, hit the grain, it'll come through the face frame. I mean, so long as, my name is Scott, that'll happen every time. Countersink, and I keep my countersink at a wee angle like this, not out here. I mean, if you're gonna have some blowout damage, you want it to be on the inside of the cabinet. That way, you go to install your trim, see, they don't give you enough room up here to attach your crown molding to. That's sad. So up there, I didn't put a piece, I didn't come around the corner with a piece. I've got to do that afterwards because the cabinet is already too big to go into that spot. Making it less annoying is putting these pieces on. Just slow down, take the time to put those on before you put those cabinets up. Otherwise, that process gets really annoying. There's nothing to nail to and you will regret it. Here's what we got from the factory. This thing is a huge cabinet. Most times I bring the cabinetry in while it's still packaged. So getting this monster into this house wasn't easy. So I definitely don't want to take it back out and then do it again 2 weeks from now after I've started the installation. But after I unpackaged it, I see that somehow this road rash was allowed to be a part of the assembly. I don't know how this missed the quality control aspects of this manufacturer. Had they taken the panel and turned it around and then assembled it, I'd be, you know, like, yeah, that makes sense because that's all buried. But in the assembly process, somebody saw it and thought, you know what? I think that'll fly. But I mean, whoa. That is huge. Also, it passed quality control. Also, it passed in the packaging. But listen, we're not going to wait 10 days. The client said, no, we're not doing that. If this were on this side, visible from that side, this would be a totally different, this cabinet's coming out of here. But since, you know, this, you're at the kitchen window and you're looking around and you're looking that way, rarely are you gonna look this way. So we've decided we're gonna just keep it in place and keep installing. But I'm gonna try to camouflage it by putting this blue tape over it. No, I'm just gonna use this blue tape to minimize the residue caused by my first layer that I'm gonna put on here is just to kind of smooth things out. So I don't want that all over the place. And I use a product called Timbermate. It's the consistency of like hot peanut butter, but it dries almost to the consistency of Bondo, or about as hard as Bondo. But you can take wet rag, and a lot of times I'll take a block of wood, wrap it in paper towel, but the paper towel is slightly damp, a little bit more than damp, but not dripping. And I'll use that block of wood and I'll go back and forth. I'll show you guys, I'll show you. But you don't want to let this lid off because this hardens with air pretty quickly. So you get this stuff, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it in an array of different colors. White sometimes is hard to get. I'm just gonna try to put it over top of the damage here, just to kind of get it so I can make it smooth with a block of wood with a damp paper towel over top of that. So let's start there. I'm putting more on more on there than what I probably need, knowing that I can flatten that out. Almost, if you think of in terms of like drywall mud, I'm filling in the valley and then I'm going to rub it flush with my drywall knife, but not a drywall knife, a block of wood wrapped in damp paper towel. So let's see how this goes. Let's take that off, both sides. It already looks better. Now I'm gonna let that dry. Tomorrow I'll take a block of wood and I'll smooth it out. And then we'll put some color match paint over top of that. I really try to avoid the times where I'm hanging uppers over top of lowers. Sometimes you should and need to. In this case, this ginormous oven cabinet connects the lower cabinets and the upper cabinets, and it defines where the upper cabinet is gonna start. I wanted to get my corner cabinet in, then I wanted to get this cabinet in between the corner cabinet and the oven cabinet. Now I can work my way back and put this upper up here, the upper next to it, and they call for a filler at the end, and then that's done. It's really easy to forget that you want to have these nailers on here to accept the crown molding. It's even easier to forget is where you ran a screw. This is where you don't want to run a nail when you least expect it. Right here is probably where I want to run a nail. Probably right here is where I want to run a nail. And probably right here is where I want to run a nail also. But since I marked that, I'm going to avoid that area like the plague, because if a nail hits that screw, it can pop out through the face or the face of the molding. That nail is going to come to get you, and it's going to say, hello, you have to redo this. I know you want to get boxes on the wall and get paid. Remembering these things is going to get you there faster. Okay, so I put this upper cabinet up, and I remember to put the nailing flange up. That's good. There's never been a better time than right now to see if this cabinet is at all plumb. This one's not quite there. It's going to be a little bit harder to adjust later. So it looks like the bottom has got to come out a little bit. And again, don't do this with the tapered wood shims. Do it with flat stacked pieces of laminate, something dense and hard like your head. That way, the next cabinet will go on there, and the backs will be on the same plane. So the fronts are likely to be on the same plane, depending on who built them. Perfect-ish.
Little piece of MDF, 3/8 of an inch thick. Just take a paper towel and wrap it. All right, let's take this and flatten it out a little bit. Get that water off of there, just in the field of the cabinetry somewhere. That way it's nice and clean. This is that timber mate, and this is where the road rash was. Just real gently, just kind of go over a little bit. It almost acts like drywall mud to a certain extent. Kind of cleans off of there, nice. When it's dry though, it's really rigid. It's pretty stiff stuff. See that? How it just kind of smooths out? Real gentle. I'm just touching it with this wet rag and the block. So now we've stabilized that skin of white material that's wrapping that core of particle board or MDF or whatever it is with a nice smooth hard material such as Timbermate. I got to build this ramp so that this cabinet, it's got this crack in it. I'm going to install it now, but I got to pull it back out and replace it after the countertop's in. It's not going to be really easy. So I got to ramp this up. It's got to be shimmed up 1/4 inch. So I got to build a bunch of laminate strips to create a wee ramp. That's what I got to do. I'm just going to alternate these babies. I'm going to use this heating and cooling duct tape because it's super thin, but it's strong. So then when that cabinet goes, it'll go up here, and it'll come back out. And the next cabinet will go up here, and it'll rest right there. The refrigerator area, where you have like a cabinet above the refrigerator and a panel on the left, a panel on the right, that can be a little tricky. I need somebody hand me a clamp. It's tight at the top. There's just a wee space at the bottom. This is just perfect. So now I'm just gonna make this connection here at the cabinet. Then I'm going to do whatever I need to do to stabilize this upper cabinet, making sure that this is dead plumb geometrically correct. Connect that cabinet and then bring in this left partition.
and wedge it in there perfectly. Who knows if I'm gonna have to fight with that. So I'm gonna make sure that this panel doesn't have what we call scoliosis. So I can control what's happening here with clamps, and it's tight and it's good. And I put my laser on it. I don't know if you can see that in the screen. It goes all the way up. So what happens here between these two, I can't really control too much, except for when this upper cabinet comes in and this upper cabinet comes in. But I can make sure that the top point is exactly where I need it to be. So hidden behind here, I just took a block, pushed it over to my laser, ran one little pin nail in there where no matter what, it's gonna be hidden. Since everything is mocked up, I gotta make sure that I can get my upper cabinet in here and I can get my other panel in here. This panel here is 1 5/8". The other one's the same. And my cabinet is 37. I need 38 and 5/8. And I have 39 and an 8. That's ½ inch difference. This is a perfect example of why you want to use flat shims stacked up. You can leave those shims in place and slide it 1/4, ½ inch, and it'll be at the same. You don't have to completely start over. If I was using soft wood taper shims, this would be a totally different story. It's start over time. And the other thing is, I'm glad that I didn't install this upper here. Otherwise, it would have to move too. Pretty smart of me, huh? All right, so I moved it over 1/2 inch. Redo my little nail here. Hold that in place. 38 and 5/8. Clear. We now have our math across there, which is awesome. We moved it ½ inch. Awesome. Now it's time to bring in whatever I need to bring in to set this upper cabinet in place. This is 1/8 inch material, so you run a screw through there, it's just going to blow through. When you run your screws, you're going to go through the back into the stud. But what happens if you were to add onto the wall a ledger? It has to be less than the thickness of this so it doesn't hold it out, but it's definitely going to help the tail end of this cabinet from falling down. So that's what I added. I didn't make it, like from far left to far right. And I didn't, hold it way too tight. I just took a measurement. I just came a hair under that, just in case the bottom back of this cabinet gets lazy. An upper cabinet that goes above the refrigerator can be one of the more challenging aspects of a kitchen installation. Take your time and think out how you're going to get this small, awkward, heavy cabinet to defy gravity between cabinet connecting comrades that you're not quite sure are in the places that you want them to be. You'll notice that I've taken a lot of care to make sure that the top of this cabinet matches the top of the cabinet to the right of it. I've taken sure to make sure I understand where the studs are. I've made sure that I understand where the tail end of this cabinet is going to sit, where the bottom of it is going to sit. And I also added a temporary block just so when I lift this up and put that on there, it starts to hold it a little early. I'm going to want some help early on. I also, on the front of the cabinet, because somebody's got to hold on to that while I scramble for tools and fasteners and that sort of thing, I put this block in place with 2 clamps to make sure that it doesn't slide down. So the idea is I pick this cabinet up, go into position, and I'm able to pretty much let it go. I've got to defy gravity, and there's a lot of weight. Also, I want to be able to use my ladder, and it's a small ladder, not a 10-footer. It's a small, sturdy 4-footer. And I'm kind of adding a little bit of pressure here, and I know that when I get this in place, I'm going to want this clamp to be where I want the clamp. And then I'm going to, while I'm holding the cabinet with my left hand, I'm going to be collapsing my clamp, holding it in place with my right hand. That way I can kind of step away and make sure that everything is where I need it to be. I'm confident in everything that's happening on this side, the back side, and that side. But I don't want to find out a bunch of surprises when I got this thing up in the air. I only want to do this once and I'm done. So I'm going to double check and make sure that all of my math is right. Now I'm going to locate where I think the studs are going to be in terms of where they're going to be in the back of the cabinet. And slow down, man. Don't measure from the wrong side of the cabinet. Have you ever done that? Oh my God. While I'm doing it, are you guys paying attention? Listen, when I'm thinking this stuff all out, and I'm running these holes, I don't want like one hole down here and one hole up here so you look at them and they're crooked. That's just, not good practice. So I try to stay about 3/4 of an inch in from the edge of that everywhere. And that way, at least when somebody looks up there and they're looking at your work, when, they get home from work and you're at home and they're questioning everything that you do, they can't point that out. It looks like you're trying to pay attention and there's some structure in the way that you do things. I believe that I have all of my ducks in a row. I have this clamp that's going to be my second hand where I can clamp the cabinet to this partition, and that's my, this clamp makes it possible for me not to hire somebody at, $30 an hour. That $7 clamp is saving me about 70 grand a year. Anyway, so I'm gonna film for the first time ever me taking a cabinet that's larger than me. It looks like my casket. It's like short and fat and heavy. All right, now I'm going to set it in place, and let's see what kind of trouble I run into. I didn't film me preloading the screws into the pre-drill holes, but I do that. I put all 4 in there. When you get to this point, you've slowed down so much that you're just trying to hurry up. Resist the urge to do that, because you're gonna skip a step. If my clamp up there, if I have a problem and I've got to set this back down, back and forth, you're just risking, bodily injury and damages to cabinets and squashing a cat or something like that. I always somehow leave my glasses on the top of my head and I set the cabinet right on top of those glasses. This beam is definitely gonna be in my way. I'm gonna just smash the corner bead of this. Don't wanna do that. Give myself some real estate. All right, you guys wish me luck, okay? Whenever you think you got this, sometimes in life, you just don't. Just test it. How much? So I've been able to defy gravity. That's awesome. Not gonna let go of this. Put a hand on it with a halfway decent, graceful grip. That's the name of a band. I mean, they don't exist yet, but I'm sure somebody's gonna steal it for a band name. All right, I feel comfortable letting this go. If I run those screws in right now, I'm making a commitment, but I should measure this space to make sure that the partition fits in there. Do I just go and grab the partition right now and slip it in there? If this has got to flex ever so slightly, it absolutely can. One thing I did forget to do is put a nailer onto the top of this cabinet. It's okay, I'll figure something out. So here's what we ended up with. It's all in the planning. So now I'll run those screws. I'll fasten something to the top, like some sort of a nailer to receive my crown molding, and this refrigerator area is done. For whatever reason, they just won't do you the favor by holding the doors down 3/4 of an inch. They run them right up to, the top, which is super fun. See what I did here? I put like a piece of 3/8 because I had some scrap, 3/4, that got me above, and then I just offset it 3/4 so it would come, and my objective is to have this flush with the face frame. Pretty simple. And I'm just gonna set that right on top, and I just don't like seeing a bunch of fasteners. When you open up the door immediately, you're like, oh my God, it's like this thing got shot up. It was in a gunfight. What I like to do is I'll hold those fasteners tight to the back side of this. So they're just, inconspicuous as, I can make them. So I had to replace a couple cabinets. They came in damaged. They were packaged damaged. Why were they packaged damaged? We don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But that wasn't going to happen the next day. And I didn't know if that cabinet was coming in 2 weeks, 2 months, before, after the stone came. I assumed that it would come after the stone was installed. I set myself up for success, and I had the shims in the back in a way that I could pull the cabinet out and then push it back in. But I wanted my shims screwed down in place so they didn't shift around. I didn't have to mess with it. And so I created little ramps on the back set of shims on both sides. And I taped them down, screwed them down, secured them so they wouldn't move. When I pulled this thing out, when I put this back in, luckily I set myself up for success. The old one came out, the new one went in. I'm already on a different task. I'm here to install hardware. While all of my stuff was set up in the initial phase of my installation, I set myself up for success. Everything went nice and smooth. I was really glad. Now, my mind isn't occupied and I'm not distractible when it comes to setting up the jig for my hardware. And now today is an easy day. I want to thank you for coming this far in a lengthy video. I'm going to take this video, this particular kitchen that's in this video, and do a comparison to the Menards Clearview package. And I'm going to highlight some of the things to watch out for. Whether you're a seasoned veteran installer, regular carpenter that has done a few kitchens, and there's just a few things that you might pick up from me, or if you're in the market to remodel your own kitchen, whether you're going to do it yourself or hire this out, there's some things that are pretty important to note about the difference between different cabinet lines. Maybe it's budget-minded, and you just want to do a comparison on more budget-minded cabinetry, or if you want to go to next level, state-of-the-art cabinetry, can you involve some budget-minded cabinets and still make that mark and go and have ultimately an amazing kitchen without breaking the bank? There's some things in the next few videos here that may be pretty helpful.
Either way, stay safe, stay busy, and stay tuned for our studied opinion on that subject.